So thank you for joining me for this presentation on essay writing for the Rising Star Award. We'll start today by going over exactly what this award is for and what the essay topic will be about. Then we'll talk about planning your essay, different types of essays, the standard three-part structure, and each of those parts from the middle, the opening to the middle to the closing, and then we'll finish off with talking a bit about some editing and resources to use. So the AHDI Rising Star Award is given to the student who submits the best 200-word essay on Soaring to New Heights, this year's theme. The student also needs to be a member with AHDI, and you can get a student membership with them. And also either be enrolled in or have recently graduated from a healthcare documentation program. So you will need an instructor, such as myself, to verify your student status, and we can do this by making a letter for you with the school's name somewhere that you can attach along with the form. And the deadline for submitting this essay is May 12th. So that is about a month away, but don't wait till the last minute. If you do intend on entering this, try jotting down some ideas while we're talking today. And afterwards, maybe fire off a quick email just to ask one of the instructors to verify your student enrollment so you can get that out of the way nice and early on. So this year's theme is Soaring to New Heights, and the essay will ask you to outline how you will build your career to new heights and soar from a student to an active healthcare documentation specialist and beyond. In the MTHDS program at CanScribe, you already work with speech recognition, one of the roles that they outline here. And you'll be working with that from the speech recognition chapter all the way to the final exam. But if you've ever considered some roles like auditing later on, or other things like billing or coding, or scribing or patient advocacy, this isn't a bad time to kind of explore that a little and see if any of those pique your interest. As a teacher, I can say that instruction should definitely be on this list too, as something that you can continue moving into at some point in the future after you have more experience. And but before that happens, there are also roles in quality assurance that once you've been working with a company for usually over a year, they might move you over to auditing the work of other MTs. And finally, CanScribe does have courses on coding and scribing that you can explore as well. So those are all things to kind of look at as future roles that you could consider moving into at some point. So when it comes to planning your essay, there's three main steps to begin with. And the start gathering information for this topic, I'm going to have a bunch of prompts for you guys to write down and explore. And even though you want three main points to create your thesis from, it's always a good idea to just, get out everything you can possibly think of on the page. Like really just get down as many things as you possibly can, because picking the best of a selection is honestly, it'll make you feel more sure about your selection than just coming up with three things and saying, okay, let's go from here. Because even if it just helps you to not wonder if there's could have been something else you could have thought of, but also having those things to compare to each other, you can also look for links between them, and you'll just have a lot more material to work from. So we'll be spending some time with gathering information today to help you prep for your essay. And then step 2 and 3 are mostly going to be after this presentation. And like, obviously, you can spend more time gathering information afterwards. But once you have all this information and you've picked the strongest points, you can go in and form a thesis from that where you're linking those together. So the goal of your first paragraph is to get your reader to gently come to your thesis Um, and by the time they reach the last sentence of that intro paragraph, they should have all the information they need to, all the context they need to understand what you're trying to say in this essay. So, and from there, you'll be building the supporting paragraphs where you take each of those main 3 points and make that into a topic sentence, and then write some supporting sentences for that. So we'll talk about all this in more detail. For now, a couple of things that I just want to get you thinking about is thinking about wanting to come away with 3 strong points that have links between each other, and thinking more in causal relationships than chronological ones. Because when it comes to making a good story that will kind of fit this essay's theme, instead of saying this happened to me and then this happened and then this happened and that's why I'm going to soar, it's much better to say, well, this is part of my history. Because of that, I have a strong passion, interest, whatever, in this side of it. And because of that passion, I'm going to use that in these ways. Those causal relationships will really help to bring your point home more effectively. And a lot of this is going to involve self-promotion. So this is something that a lot of people aren't very comfortable doing. A lot of people see it as either vain or bragging. And frankly, if you can get past that and frame it instead with self-promotion is really what you're bringing to the table. So you're trying to answer the question, why you, of all people, how are you uniquely going to shape the world around you? And you are, whether you like it or not. Everyone is shaping the world around them in their own unique way. And so just learning to kind of frame that positively with what you bring, and look at the things that you've had to overcome, not as points against you, but as just part of your story. All of these are really important skills that go way beyond the scope of just this little essay, because your whole life is going to depend on being able to promote yourself to other people. It's what makes our relationships better. It makes it easier to get jobs, especially in the interviewing process, and move up within those jobs. So if you can really use this opportunity to build up more self-confidence in yourself, that's a skill that you're going to use for the rest of your life. Because yeah, your personal journey and the passion and interests that you bring to this field are going to make healthcare better. So you're not just answering this question of how you're going to soar to new heights, but why you, of all people, are going to do this in your way. And you're going to do that by telling a story with your obstacles, your issues, your influences, how those brought you where you are. So you get the reader to realize how you're going to do this on their own. By telling them the story, you actually exert a type of psychological effect where they're actually convincing themselves of this rather than you having to do it. So that's why we want to use that causal relationship, that kind of creating a story rather than just listing off your great traits. And another thing I want to touch on just in this whole scope of self-promotion is that a lot of people feel like they're either too young or too old, especially when it comes to transitioning to a new field. And I just would like to get this out of the way right now so that it's not, nagging at you through this whole thing, because there's no perfect age to change careers, and there's no perfect time to do it, nor is there a bad time to do it. If you're a spring chicken or not, you have life experience, you have passion, you have influences that can help you soar. So just, yeah, let's explore those things that make you you. So when it comes to selling your story, here's some of the things that you can use to kind of get thinking about this. And just jot down really short points here. You don't have to go into big details right now. It's actually better to keep it a bit short and just draw out some of the relevant points. So when you're thinking about what it was like growing up where you did, how does that relate to healthcare though, and the job you're going to do? If you like, if I were looking at where I grew up on a farm, so that instills a sense of hard working, but also working on your own, not needing supervision when, you're out in the middle of nowhere, which is very relevant to a remote working position. But, maybe your parents really instilled a sense of accuracy or um, attention to detail or that kind of thing in you. What were your interests growing up? I was a big reader. I know a lot of people who get drawn to this are as well because they enjoy reading the stories that are in each report. Or maybe you had an interest in medicine or being part of the healthcare system, but never really fit for whatever reason. Um, who influenced you or helped you succeed along the way in your life? Like, who are the supporting influences? And, sometimes people can influence you by not necessarily being great role models, but not wanting to be like something is also an influence. It's what you're making of something. So that can be another way that someone influences you, but it is better to kind of stick to the positive framing. So if you are going to touch on a negative like that, I would shift very quickly into your positive takeaway from that, um, to keep the tone of this essay positive and uplifting. So yeah, have you gone anywhere interesting? Have you had any major life-changing experiences that you could draw into this? Um, were there any obstacles that stood in the way of your success? What opportunities have you had? What lessons did you learn through your experiences? These are all, great things that you can kind of pull. And even, if you're at the point in careers where you're looking at your resume, there might be some skills and work experiences or volunteer whatever experiences from there that you can kind of just jot down and see if there's something you can pull from that. So when you have some selling points down for you, you might want to think about how you're going to sell them. Who? HDI. Why? Because you're writing this for them after all. They're the people who put out the Book of Style, so they are a huge influence in our industry. And this is the main resource you've been using to learn the formatting for healthcare documentation in the program. But they do a lot of other things in our industry as well. They provide members with a community to support their careers with online learning, conferences. They have credentialing that could help you progress as an MT in your career. I know that was important for me when I entered a teaching role. So I went through their credentialing, and that also just makes me a more um, verified, reputable MT when it comes to having that credential that comes from this organization. They also promote our role in the industry by advocating how important we are to risk management, so that the healthcare community understands how we keep patients safe. And I know they put out statistics on errors due to mistakes in documentation, especially when certain places are relying on heavier and heavier automation, and how that compares to actually having a trained human being look through this and catch things. So they do a lot to advocate for us in our roles. And you can find a lot of this stuff on their About page, just on the AHDI website, to sort of think about how they could be part of that journey as well as you transition from where you are now as a student or a research grad to how you're going to soar and how their influence can help you. So another couple points you can kind of jot down just in this, thinking of, not just your personal story, but some of the uh, like the HDI organization, and also CanScribe as a school in that role of how, this is going to help you either push off from here or keep going later on. So thinking of things like what attracted you to this program in um, medical transcription, and what attracts you to the transcription field as a whole, because that passion is going to keep driving you later on. Um, what resources do you intend to use when you after you graduate? And does HDI fit into that? Because they are really one of the biggest resource spaces we have for that. Um, who do you want to learn from, and how do you want to keep learning? What subjects really excite you? What topics do you plan to keep on learning more of after graduation? These are all things that will help guide not just this essay, but actually, later when you graduate, it will keep your career moving in a positive, active direction. So when you're thinking about the stories that you're collecting from your life to answer the question, why you, now you're kind of shifting to brainstorming about how answering the question, why them? How will they fit into this? And connecting you with this organization for the purposes of this essay will obviously put a nice tone on this, because flowery doesn't hurt, but there is a fine line where flowery becomes not too appealing. So you really do want to think about how this is something you actually intend to use, and make it come from a genuine place. Um, that way it will help you with this essay, but it will actually help you when you graduate and think about how you want to progress in your career. So there are two main essay types that I think we should focus on for this type of essay. There are plenty of different types, but this is going to be a really short essay. 200 words doesn't give you a lot of room to move, and I'll show you an actual example of that later. But because it's pretty short, the cause and effect style of essay is explaining the relationship between two or more events, um, or even just one for this because it is short. So you can identify an event in your life and explore the effects of it, or working backwards, if the event is how you're going to soar, how you're going to graduate and move into this role in the industry, look at the causes of that, how you got to that event in your life. So we're explaining how or why things happen and the results of them. Um, Then the problem and solution essay explains how you're going to solve a problem in healthcare documentation. So you can start with a brief intro into the problem, which in this case would be how are you going to soar in new heights, and then explain your solutions to that problem. So a lot of essays are structured chronologically, where the author will explain the earliest things first and move on from there. That might not work for this. Especially, I would encourage you to keep things kind of short and point form right now, and try arranging things around a little bit. Like, if you have a couple cue cards, something that can be helpful is to jot down your three main points that you want to bring up in this essay, and just try rearranging and see how the different arrangement brings your point home, and how it can say different things, because this is something that's explored a lot in fiction writing, where if you, let's say, introduce a character who does something really bad and then really good, that straight ahead kind of arc makes it redemptive when he does the good thing after the bad thing. But if you have a character who starts out and you explain this good thing he does, but then later on in the story you find out he did something horrible, it's no longer a redemption arc because of the way that was presented. So obviously, we're not talking about anything this serious in this essay, but that is just an example of how that different arrangement can affect the impact it has on your reader. And, no matter how insightful your thoughts, you do need to structure them for the benefit of your reader, because no, that's really how they're presented will impact how well the reader actually gets your point and gets what you're saying. So good essays usually introduce a thesis and its supporting points in the first paragraph, and they expand on each point in the following paragraphs and conclude by summarizing these points and the thesis again. And this might seem like a really repetitive process, but if you can think instead of each repetition as adding information or adding emphasis, that is your end goal in this. So you don't just want to restate anything word for word. Kind of like our account specifics, we want to take out redundancies, but we do want to add more information and add more emphasis each time we bring up the same point again. So let's look at each of these essay parts now. The most important part of your aspect of your essay is going to be having a strong thesis statement. It's telling your reader why your argument is so important, and it convinces them to read the rest of your essay. But we don't want to be pushy either. We want to gently but firmly guide them to the thesis. So usually you'll start by giving a short descriptive sentence with your 3 main points, and then bring that home with the thesis in your last sentence. Some things to avoid with this, you do want to use strong language and avoid things like "I think" or "in my opinion" kind of statements. That weakens your point. Even though your thesis is your own opinion, you state it as a fact to convince others of your point of view. A lawyer doesn't get up and say, "I think my client is innocent." They say, "My client is innocent," and then they go on to prove that. Next, you don't want to use overgeneralized words or statements. You want to be specific. So what I mean by this is, there are a lot of general statements that bring people to this field and attract them to this. And there are definitely some general skill sets that you can employ to excel in this field. And you don't want to just say, "Oh, I want to work from home, and I know to do that I'm going to have to be accurate and manage my time." You want to say why you want to work from home, why that's important to you. If it's so that your corgi Winston can sit in your lap, fine. And if it helps you concentrate to be in your own space, I know that's important for me. I don't know if I could ever do a presentation like this if I wasn't in the comfort of my home office and having this feeling of being in a place of power to overcome the general nervousness of public speaking. That's a huge shift. So that's a very specific thing that changes it from, "Oh, I want to work from home," to why you would want to work from home. And the skills that you use, you want to, again, find that causal relationship. If you feel you're a very detail-oriented, accurate person, why is that? Is it that you get a sense of satisfaction from straightening things out and making everything neat and proper? Or is it, why does that tickle you? Is it something that you just got driven into you from doing a certain job before this one? Whatever that causal relationship is, you want to find that link. And even while we're being this specific and strong, don't use too complex vocabulary. There's an expression, "Don't use a 20-cent word where a 5-cent one will do." And that's because back in the day, we used to charge for writing by the word or by the letter, even in some cases. So a 20-cent word would be superfluous, where you could have just said, complex. Something you want to go for the vocabulary and the structure that's clear and approachable to your reader. And finally, you definitely want to make sure you're outlining your main points all in that first essay. You're telling them exactly what is going to be covered in the essay so that nothing that comes later feels like it's coming out of left field or is being jammed in there. So the 3 paragraphs between the intro and concluding paragraphs is going to contain the meat of your essay. The first sentence of each paragraph tells the reader what this paragraph will be about. with a distinct topic that provides evidence for your thesis. So again, when we're talking about your thesis here is basically how you are going to soar to new heights. And then each paragraph in here should tell them one of the reasons why. You want to make sure that every sentence in a paragraph relates back to the topic sentence. Again, we don't have a lot of room to move here with 200 words, so you really don't want to combine multiple topics into a paragraph. It will make it too confusing, complex, and it does weaken each point when you're trying to jam too many together. So if you have to bring in new information, like if you have to do that, it kind of indicates that maybe that point wasn't strong enough to have supporting evidence enough on its own. So we really want to think about forming an eloquent but concise body with at least one or two arguments. And what can really help here is having a counter argument too. So in this case, when we're talking about your personal story that you're trying to sell here, the one or two arguments for how you're going to soar will usually be something from your history, how you're going to use supports in the industry, where you want to go, that kind of thing, and add supporting facts to draw that causal relationship so the reader comes to the conclusion themselves to believe what you're trying to say. And the counter argument can actually help that, because good counter argument could be an obstacle or a limitation that you face in this field and how you plan to overcome it. Because kind of like that question that most hiring managers will ask in your interviews, what do you think your weaknesses are? Or what do you think your greatest weakness is? They want to hear that you're self-aware and have a plan to overcome things. So you could make this essay completely positive and just talk about your good traits, but it's a good thing to consider maybe thinking of something that's a limitation or an obstacle and talk about how you plan to overcome that, because that shows a different kind of strength and awareness. So the key to a really well-written essay is providing your reader with a clear thesis, coherent supporting paragraphs, and then a smooth conclusion into your final paragraph. The concluding paragraph should start with a summary of your thesis, not repeated, but restated with emphasis. And then you want to link back to your points and how they support your answer to the question of how, why you specifically will soar to new heights in your career, and then give them a sense of licking the envelope, this finished feeling of emotional closure. This whole process is going to help you think more clearly and critically. Regardless of what you actually plan to do after graduation, being a good writer and a clear thinker will give you a leg up in your competition, in any field. So this last paragraph might have to be reworked. Same with the opening, which is why I really suggest jotting things down, keeping your writing loose, and just preparing that you're probably going to have to do a fair bit of editing and maybe multiple editing passes. But you should be used to doing that by now, since our course definitely encourages multiple editing passes. So that habit is a strength, a really big strength when it comes to writing, because a lot of writing is good rewriting. So when you're coming to, after the process of gathering information, trying to pull these points, you want to structure your story so that it makes sense to the reader. It can't just make sense to you, because you know the causal links between things in your life, but you have to make this clear to someone else now. So the more revisions you do, the better and clearer your writing will become. And you can use different resources for multiple passes. The Hemingway app can help to improve the readability of your essay. It actually highlights hard to read sentences. Grammarly can help correct grammar. And having another person can really help to tell you if your point has come across clearly and whether it was an interesting read. So this is what 200 words looks like in the Hemingway app in this picture here. It's not a lot. My opening paragraph really needs to get to that point quick and generate interest. The 3 paragraphs in between will have the topic sentence followed by 1 or 2 supporting sentences that really have to stay on point, and then maybe link to the next paragraph. And then the conclusion is going to summarize all those points in a slightly new way, with basically what the reader should be taking away from the essay. No new ideas should be introduced here in that conclusion. To get this kind of really tight, concise conclusion and the opening too, this is going to take multiple passes. And, you know, the odds are you're probably going to write way more than 200 words and have to cut back, and that's fine. Don't be afraid to throw out anything that doesn't fit this essay. It's a really hard thing to do when you've invested the time to writing something, but it's much better to start with, you know, twice this amount of word count and cut down to the best 200, because the reader isn't going to miss what you cut out. And that's a really important thing to remember, that they won't know what didn't make it into this final cut, but you really want to just make sure that what survives to this 200 word count is your strongest points in the clearest, tightest ways that you can put that into an essay. So again, asking a friend or a family member or a teacher like me to help with this can really help to zero in on what points might be taking you off topic and might not be as interesting to the reader, or might not be as obvious what you're trying to say. So one of the concepts that I love this expression is to take out your throat clearing, because the opening paragraph of an essay is the reader's introduction to the topic, and it really needs to start with a sentence that hooks the reader's attention. Each subsequent sentence after that needs to add more information, and the last sentence is essential because it has to have your thesis statement hitting home. So this is your main argument. And then to make this really strong, you want to cut away anything that's not getting to that point quickly. So we call this throat clearing, because think about what you're doing when you clear your throat. You're preparing to speak, but you haven't said anything yet. So you want to look for any text that feels like that, like you're coming to the point maybe soon. Get that out of the way. Get to the point as quickly as possible in the first couple sentences, so that you can engage your reader and keep their engagement. And to get there, you're probably going to have to go back and rework it, because you need to really know what you're saying before you can write that first sentence that conveys what you're saying. So there will be some back and forth to get to that point. The first couple pages I would suggest checking out after this are AHDI's the actual Integrity Awards page, so you can get an idea of what everything is on here. And then the About AHDI page will help you pull some points for selling them in your essay. And their learning portal might also be a good thing to check out, just to get some ideas of what you could use later on after graduation. I also put together a list of 10 articles that you can look over that are about essay writing. This is on Medium, so that website is kind of like a magazine, and you do hit a monthly cap of 5 metered, like paid for articles every month. So this list of 10 articles, half of them are unpaid. So you should be able to read through this whole list of articles if you want to before hitting that paywall. Because I wouldn't want you to have to go through that just to learn more about this. And some of these articles are going to be a bit more useful than others. Some of the paid ones I did include are from authors who are basically talking about writing essays for scholarships or to get into degree programs, which is very similar to what you're trying to do here. You're trying to sell yourself to an academic or, in this case, credentialing organization, and it's going to follow a lot of the same kind of themes. And then, of course, you can use the Hemingway app and the Grammarly website to help with your grammar and improving your readability.